Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Fulbright International Arctic Seminar. My name is Joel Erickson. I direct the Fulbright Program in Russia and the Institute of International Education that's located here in Moscow. We're very excited that all of you could join us today. The great communications expert Marshall McLuhan from the University of Toronto once said that the message is the medium. And I think it's important to note that we're uniting scholars from 5 countries across 16 time zones today. And I think we're doing it with practically no impact on the environment, as we would and certainly be doing if we were gathering in a normal conference sort of setting. So we're really excited that we could do this. There's been an ongoing discussion now for close to 6 months about this event. So I'm glad we're finally here. And I must admit that I'm not only excited, but I'm impressed at the degree to which we've been able to gather a really great group of scholars. And so I wish all of you a great experience, and I hope that we will meet our goals, which are to further collaboration and cooperation and mutual understanding, which of course is the ethos of the Fulbright program, not only in Russia, but all over the world. And so again, welcome. We'd like to start today with a greeting that we've recorded from the U.S. Ambassador, John Sullivan, the U.S. Ambassador to Russia. And so he'll have a few words to say to you now. Mm-hmm.
Hello. I'm very happy to speak to you today at the Fulbright International Arctic Conference. This year is a significant one for many reasons. Russia not only again assumes chairmanship of the Arctic Council and the Arctic Coast Guard Forum, but we are also celebrating the 75th anniversary of the global Fulbright program. I don't need to tell any of you how important the Arctic is to the United States of America, to Russia, and to the world. And while, of course, we all work toward our goal of getting the urgent global crisis of COVID-19 under control, we must not forget the grave reality we are also facing with greater catastrophic problems ahead, that is climate change. The Arctic region is an extremely fragile ecosystem, and it is warming twice as fast as the rest of the planet. Arctic ice is melting significantly faster than Antarctic ice, and much faster than even many of our worst-case scenario climate models predicted. The United States has now rejoined the Paris Agreement, and we have taken a number of steps over the past few weeks to demonstrate our leadership on environmental issues, with more ahead. The United States will immediately begin the process of developing its nationally determined contribution under the Paris Agreement and creating a climate finance plan. President Biden has created a special presidential envoy for climate, and he has announced the launch of a high-level climate ambition ministerial to align our policies and our goals and to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. And there's more. The United States will also reconvene the Major Economies Forum on Energy and Climate, beginning with the Leaders' Climate Summit. Through these multinational fora, the United States will pursue green recovery efforts, initiatives to advance the clean energy transition, sectoral decarbonization, and alignment of financial flows with the objectives of the Paris Agreement. We all have a great responsibility to safeguard the climate for future generations. That's why I'm thrilled that Fulbright scholars are among those taking the lead on Arctic issues. Fulbrighters are innovators, change makers, and visionaries. 88 Fulbrighters from around the world have won the Pulitzer Prize, 66 have won a Nobel Prize, and 39 have served as heads of state or heads of government. One of your fellow Russian Fulbright alumni, Dr. Olga Solomina, is among those who won a Nobel Peace Prize. She earned it for her contributions on climate research as part of the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. As a Fulbright scholar at the University of Colorado Boulder, Dr. Solomina conducted critical research on the retreat of mountain glaciers in Eurasia. Her work is just as important today as it was when she was awarded her Fulbright Visiting Scholar Grant in 2001. This year, Fulbright chose two extremely talented Russian scholars to take part in the third cohort of the Fulbright Arctic Initiative, a program launched by the Fulbright office that brings together scholars from 8 countries. Through initiatives like these, scientists and experts from around the world will be able to work together to find creative solutions to the critical climate and social issues we all face. As ambassador, I am so pleased to see so many Russian experts working on issues facing the Arctic, the environment, and climate change through the Fulbright program. I applaud your work and appreciate all that you are doing for the planet. We are indeed facing a profound climate crisis, but I am confident that working together, we can achieve climate resilience, together with financial pathways that lead toward net zero emissions. Thank you for joining this conference. I look forward to hearing about the important dialogue and the creative solutions that will come out of your engagements.
That was wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. The Arctic region is fraught with so many challenges, as the ambassador pointed out. And I think that I'd just like to add a couple of words about that. I think that the Fulbright program, given the multidimensional aspect, the many types of subjects that we cover, I think maybe we're uniquely positioned to address an issue that is so complex that the Arctic faces us with. And secondly, I think that this is one of the best areas where the United States and Russia can better establish mutual understanding as countries. I think that this is, we're all in the same world, we're all in the same boat. And I think that if we can make headway together to address the Arctic as an issue, I think we'll be not only doing a service to the relationship between these two countries, but also for the world in general, because I think every issue that the Arctic faces is faced in some degree by every region in the world. And so again, I wish you all well as we go forward to discuss these really important issues. I'd also like to make a special thanks to the organizing committee, which consists of Damian Wampler from the U.S. Embassy in Moscow. I think it was really it was him who got us going on this discussion, and that's come to the culmination of these meetings today. Elena Grigorieva, who has been selected to participate as a Fulbright Arctic Initiative Scholar, has been instrumental in the organization of the scholars. Mikhail Bochkarov from the Almazov National Medical Research Center in St. Petersburg, you'll hear from him soon, and Anton Komarov from Lomonosov, Moscow State University, and Ksenia Shomnikova, who is our Fulbright Alumni Coordinator in this office. And now, Ksenia, I will hand over the floor to you to begin these presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you all for joining in and for your cooperation. For making it today. We're glad that this panel hopefully will go smoothly without anyone falling out, and we don't have any cancellations, so that's great. First, before we begin, I would like to remind everyone about certain rules of the seminar, so it's easier for us to follow. So all panelists' microphones will be automatically muted until the time of their presentation to avoid disrupting the seminar, just in case. And then unmuted altogether for each report and subsequent Q&A. And at the end of the panel, also all microphones will be unmuted so you can participate in the discussion. Each panelist, I remind you, has exactly 15 minutes to present the report and 5 minutes to answer questions from the audience. If your presentation lasts over the Q&A and is at the 20-minute mark, I will have to cut you off and inform you that it's time for another speaker to present. The audience is welcome to submit their questions during each presentation related to the presentation, of course, into the Q&A box on the taskbar. I will read the questions to each panelist during the Q&A, as many as we have time for. Please, attendees, make sure to specify which panelist your question is for, because during the seminar, the panelists may also type in their replies to your questions if they didn't have time to answer them live. And at the end of the panel, as I've already mentioned, we will have 20 minutes for a general discussion where panelists can engage in a dialogue, ask each other questions, or maybe answer more questions from the Q&A box. We'll see. So I would also, since everyone is there and here right now with us, I would really be very grateful if you could turn on your cameras right now and we could take a group screenshot of all of you. I hope everyone is here. So far I see only Vladimir and Anisia. Okay, great. Alena, Alexander, perfect. And Tatiana and Anastasia, are you there? Could you please turn on your cameras?
Yes, I'm here. That's
Tatiana, yeah, I don't see you, unfortunately. Oh, yes, something's going on. Okay, great. Thank you, Tatiana, I see you. And Anastasia is the only one left. So if she could turn on her camera right now. Anastasia, are you with us? Anastasia's presentation is second in line, so yes. Oh, no. Anastasia, you can't turn on your camera?
Here. I'm here.
But something is wrong with the camera, or you can't turn?
I can turn it on. I don't know why.
That's strange. I see like as if the video is streaming right now, so I can't. Maybe you could try log off and log back in. We still have time. So we still have time, more than 5 minutes before our first presentation.
Okay, I'll try to log
off
and
try to leave and then come back. And everyone, please stay with us. We'll wait for Anastasia. Maybe the next time around it'll work for her, because the videos are allowed. You can turn them on, no problem. Okay, Anastasia is back. And let me ask her. No, still no video, unfortunately. This is strange. So Anastasia, the camera still, for some reason, cannot connect.
Still does not work. I don't know why.
Yeah. Unfortunately. Well, you still can make your presentation. We will hear it.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, if it works like that, we won't be able to see anything. So maybe there will be more questions in regards to your presentation then, so you can voice them later. Oh, okay, then, since Anastasia cannot be... Anastasia, can you turn off your camera so that your picture comes back on? So we still have time. Yeah, so perfect. Okay, then, thank you, everyone. 1, 2, 3. And thank you. Thank you. Yes. Now the picture is done. So we still have 5 more minutes, actually. But probably we should start. Joel, what do you think? So, yeah. Okay, then we will begin our first panel titled, what's the title of our first panel? Wait a second. Economics, Politics of Arctic Resource Distribution. And opening the panel is the report titled Sustainable Development in Yakutia, Economic, Environmental, and Innovative Aspects, presented by Anisia Lazareva from Northeastern Federal University in Yakutsk. Anisia, you're welcome to join us.
Hello,
And you
everyone.
have 15 minutes. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. It's nice to meet you all. Can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay. So I would like to introduce you my research here. I'm from Republic of Sakha-Yakutia, as Ksenia said. So I will go ahead and tell you more about this. So where is Yakutia? It's one of the Russian regions, and it's actually the biggest one. It's almost 1/5 of Russian territory, and it's closer to the Asian part of the country, to the eastern part of the world. So it's tightly connected with China, Korea, Japan, Mongolia, and has access to most of the regions from Far Eastern Federal District. And because of this geographical location, it's quite far from Moscow. We have a huge time difference and a huge transportation costs and so on. I will tell you more during my presentation. So according to the when we talk about the Russian population density, obviously we see that the bigger amount of people lives in the European part of the country, and really small amount of people lives far eastern we go. So Yakutsk, actually, Yakutia, the whole region has less than 1 million people who live in Yakutia. Why? We here have the map of the square of permafrost in Russia. So we can see that Siberia and far east of Russia, they are all covered and situated on permafrost. So in regards to the Yakutian territory, the whole territory of Republic is situated on permafrost. And Yakutsk, the capital of Yakutia, is the largest city on permafrost, despite being only only having population of 350,000 people. But it's the largest city on permafrost in the world. Recently, Yakutia was known in mass media because of this our natural park, Lena Pillars, for its resemblance to the wall from the Game of Thrones movie, like the winter is coming, and so on. So these pillars, they remind people from international communities and foreign countries about this movie. And also this picture of a girl from Instagram was really popular in mass media because of her lashes. So why this is happening? Average temperature on Mars is about -60 degrees Celsius, and annual temperature range between summer and winter in Yakutia may reach 100 degrees Celsius. In Verkhoyansk and Oymyakon, where the coldest, it's the coldest settlement in the world, the temperature reached -71 degrees last century. So actually we can say that Oymyakon is colder than Mars. Yakutia is colder than Mars, and we can see here possibilities for the some technological initiatives here. Yakutia is a national republic of Russia. We have a big cultural and traditional history. Also, the circumpolar countries here, we can see there are 8 circumpolar countries in the world, and Yakutia and Alaska are famous for their big, enormous extraction of natural resources. Natural resources from Yakutia are mostly exported to the eastern regions of Russia and Asian countries by the power of Siberia gas pipeline and other transportation systems. We have a really big sources of natural resources. That's why the extraction of it is very like developed by environmental consequences are getting really big. We see here the diamond mining place in Mirny. It can be seen from the space. And because of this probably really active industrial activity in the region, considering it's in the Arctic, we can see that there was a huge temperature change. And recently, due to the abnormal winter, summer temperatures, we can say that during last like few years, the temperature increased by 3 degrees Celsius in Yakutia, which is really harsh considering that we have permafrost. Everybody knows that climate change, like global warming, affects glaciers in the Arctic. They are melting, but people don't mostly think about permafrost. It's also ice and it's also melting. So the consequences of permafrost melting can be like this big. They can affect the roads, the agricultural fields, houses, railroads, and so on. So unfortunately, there was a federal tax regulating laws change in 2013. So all taxes that big resource extracting companies are paying should be paid on the place of registration of their legal entity, which is Moscow. So Yakutia has like only small amount of this money that stays in the region. So that's why like there are a few things to consider, that we have really fragile environment. The consequences of climate change in the region are really strong. And nature is really related and can be viewed and has a big role in people's like traditions and culture. But natural resources remain the main interest of our federal government, and we are getting more sensitive to industrialization. That's why, like, according to the new development strategies of the country, we should like change the way where like we are heading on. So the changes into like, towards digital economy and creative economy, it's a solution for the additional income for Republic. So I will show you the move towards the sustainability that region is going towards. So you all know the sustainability model. So I told you about economic and environmental things, and now let's move on to the social part. So how to be like sustainable, what we have to the future for the future. We need to focus on the new development advantages and possibilities that region may have, and we should reduce region's dependence on natural resource extraction for the future. So the answer is the focus on education and innovation. We should stop relying only on extracting environmental extracting natural resources due to its consequences, and need to look towards something more interesting and unique. We all know that Russia has its own like Google, Facebook, huge innovative companies in Russia that leading like, not only in Russia, but in most Russian speaking regions. And Yakutia has a really big role, because in the far eastern federal district of Russia, Yakutia is leading by the export of IT services in the Far Eastern Federal District. So we have these huge like IT companies here that are located and operate from Yakutia, Yakutsk. So here is a big game development company named Maytona. They are producing and working in Yakutsk, but they sell their products and services in United States. Also, there is like the taxi aggregator InDriver, who is like, competing with Uber worldwide. You can see here the statistic they have. Also, we have here also another game development company, which is a resident of the business incubator where I work. And they will have their game the day before released soon. So it's a big news in the game industry. Our university is Northeastern Federal University, is the biggest in the northeastern part of the Russia. It has more than 17,000 people, and has a strong research fields regarding like climate change, extraction of resources in the north, and so on. University has branches in not only in Yakutia but also in Chukotka. And like because I work in this innovative field, and also I'm a grad student in the I study regional economics in the university, I can see that these environmental, economic, and innovative aspects of development of our republic can be blended together in this sustainability model. So thank you very much for your attention. That's all.
Thank you, Anisia. Thank you so much. So far, we don't have any questions in the questions and answer box, but if any of the panelists at the moment would like to ask any questions, you're welcome to, because we still have time until the next presentation. So yeah, Alexander, go ahead. Yes.
Thank you. I've got a question. Actually, the government of Yakutsk region, Arsen Nikolaev, launched a special program on the development of the Arctic region. That's what I see right now on the net. And it's called the Strategy of the Development of Arctic Zone in Yakutia. That's how it says. And it's actually consists of 5 components: social, industrial, ecological, and innovation. And I would like to ask the presenter about all that components, or what does she think about that, and about the whole strategy itself.
Yeah, thank you. This strategy is based on the federal strategy of Russian Federation on the development of Arctic region. So Yakutia was the first region in Russia to implement its own strategy for the development of IT industries and creative economy. So the federal policies actually were inspired, maybe like they used materials that the iCensor gave, which our head of the region signed. So, and it was a really big commitment for the Republic to have these sustainable, like, new models of economic development, like social and innovative ones, to be added into the National Arctic Program for the development of our Republic. Because it's not like only I say this, right? Like the whole Republic has its view and ties its future with the development of our innovative companies. We have really developed innovative ecosystem. And of course, like, the extraction of natural resources, the development of Arctic regions regarding the industrial development and so on is really important. But like, to make the system more sustainable, we should think about, the social parts and stuff, because money from the industrial development mostly goes to other regions, and like the lesser amount of it stays in the region. So, but the money that, taxes that local innovative companies create and pay to the local budget, they stay in the region. So during even this recent pandemic, COVID-19, the payments that those companies made to the regions, they were really, like, relevant and important to fight with the consequences of pandemic. So I hope I answered your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We have one question from the audience. The question is, what about the forest fire problem in Sakha, amplified by climate change? What is the way to tackle it, to deal with it?
Yeah, this problem is actually not only about Yakutia. This problem this is the problem of the whole Siberian forest. So not only like our republic is on a fire. Yeah, this is like, many people say it's the consequences of climate change, but like, official position is that it's like, natural situation. It's not like because of the climate change. Mostly 50% of these forest fires have anthropogenic base. So the thing here is that the forest firefighting system has a really low financial support from the federal government. And I think I remember that President said that this would be changed after the recent events, and their financial support will be increased. So I hope that after we will reduce our too big reliance on industrial extraction of natural resources. Like slowly we would shift to the more sustainable model. I mean, of course, it's not like the thing that could be made in just a few years. It's a long process. I think it would take about 10 years, maybe at least. Thank you.
Thank you, Anisia. Anyone has any more questions for Anisia? Any panelists? Yes, we have another one. Are there any assessments or instances of solar and wind power generation in this region?
Yes, in the most northern part of the Yakutia, in Tiksi, there are like wind power system. This wind systems, yes, in collaboration with Japanese wind systems producing company. So the work on this way has been conducted, but there are some things, because it can be only done in Tiksi because it's located near the Arctic Ocean and it's really windy there. But in other parts of Yakutia, it's not that windy to use the wind power. But regarding the solar energy, the solar panels are also becoming more popular among the population in the rural area. But it's not still on the mass use. But people we know about it, and it's there are some programs and projects on this.
Thank you. One more question. Are there any assessments of permafrost degradation and the consequences?
Yes, we have the Russian Academy of Science has its branch in Yakutia, the northern branch that is mostly dedicated to the permafrost researches. And also we have, if I'm not wrong, I'm sorry, maybe I translated wrong, the Permafrost Research Institute located in Yakutsk. So a lot of people, even from the St. Petersburg and Moscow, who work on permafrost, they came to study and make some internships in these institutions, because they to work on the field, because St. Petersburg and Moscow obviously don't have a permafrost, and we have a really strong layer of permafrost. Like under Yakutsk, it's more than 200 meters, even in Yakutsk, which is not like too far, too northern. And there are researchers, and they have they are conducting these assessments also, themselves, and with foreign partners, and with Russian institutions too.
Thank you, Anisia. No more questions from the audience, from the panelists? Seems not. Okay, if you still have a question, a late question for Anisia. Anisia, will you be with us for a while? If you stay with us, you can answer it yourself in the question and answers box. So you can type in the answer. I hope you can. Can you do that? Do you see the questions?
I'm sorry, how long we will this
we will,
panel will be?
Yeah, well, we will be here until 4. So 4 p.m. If you cannot stay, it's okay, you can log off. You don't have to. But in
Yeah,
case
we
you
have a huge time difference, so I
oh
think
yeah,
it's
so
not
you're
comfortable for me.
yeah, okay, great. So yeah, it's up to you. If you wish to stay or if you're not, thank you so much for joining us. We know your time difference, so that's why you come first today. So, okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you once again for your presentation. And we move on to the next speaker on our list today. The next report is titled "A Role of the Spatial Temporal Heterogeneity in the Economic Development of Russian Northern and Siberian Resource Regions," presented by Anastasia Medzelets from Sochava Institute of Geography, Siberian branch of the Russian Academy of Sciences in Irkutsk. Anastasia, you go ahead. Just a second. Yes, let me.
Okay, now it's okay. Okay. Hello, dear colleagues. Very nice. I'm very glad to see you on this conference. And now I will tell you about the topic of my presentation. Essential distinguishers of geographical, historical, economic, and other peculiarities of different territories show okay. Oh, okay. Show significant heterogeneity, inequality, and non-linearity of spatial temporal development of districts, regions, states, other territorial formations. Especially, it's important for the vast parts of Siberia and north of Russia. A deeper understanding of local internal and global external conditions impact on forming stages, trends, and different vectors of territorial development is achieved by taking into account environmental and historical factors in this process. Its economic and investment processes and resource cycles and shifts in cultural and social values. For this, we decided some tasks for this research. It is study regional spatial heterogeneity of Siberian and northern regions of Russia based on different socio-economic statistical parameters, define quantitative criteria for description of temporal heterogeneity as a geohistorical reason of regional development differences. Also, we evaluated integral parameters characterizing spatial temporal heterogeneity of the regions and explain their role in the economic development of Russian northern and Siberian resource regions. Study area includes, as I told, Siberia and Russian north. You can see it on the map. And there is a part of GIS database on this slide, which we have made for the analysis, visualization, and interpretation method. We used the period of time from 2000 to 2015. We can, this area have some common peculiarities, such as vast spatial scale, high variety and difference of geographical and socio-economic conditions, hard natural conditions, traditional resource orientation of the economy, bad developed peripheral areas, and many, many, many others. You can see them on this slide. For the research, we used some methods like math modeling, system and factor analysis. It is quantitative methods. The set of qualitative comparative methods, and also geoinformation technologies like geoinformation analysis, mapping, and interpretation mapping. There is an example of basic quantitative model equation on this slide, which we used, and also we used some other mathematical models. Next slide shows a general scheme of data organization for the analysis. We use data from different resources, then create general geoinformation database by regions, fill in the database with new calculated parameters, coefficients, And then on this base, in the form of thematic geoinformation maps and attributes, we made a new set of database for visualization. Also, there is an example of statistic data which we used for calculation, and all statistic data we can present as a maps for visualization or better understanding some regularities. For the analysis of the role of spatial temporal heterogeneity in the development of Siberia and North, we consider different complex indexes for different parameters. It is index of spatial peripherality, index of life quality conditions as social parameter, and regional disparity or similarity and investment efficiency as economic characteristics. There is some results of our research. You can see the map of spatial peripherality or remoteness of study regions. There is some parameters which we used for calculation, and all indexes can be calculated in different periods of times, so we can see their changes, for example, from 2002 to 2015. There are three types of periphery for the investigated area: nearest, medium, and distant spatial periphery. And we can see that territories can change this index depending on development of infrastructure or some other parameters. Next one is integral index of life quality conditions. Also, there are 3-4 levels. And also we analyzed it during the period of time for different years. And it also can be changed for investigated regions. We have two main key factors which changed this parameter. It is overcoming of demographic depression and increase of population's life expectancy. And the next one is regional disparity and regional economic efficiency. We calculated them based on investments statistic and production, industry and agriculture production. For comparison, I showed the map for all Russia for you to see better the similarity and difference between regions. And also we defined three types of economic efficiency, like low and very low, medium, and high and very high for investigated regions. Thus, we defined several general regularity for our regions. The northern part of Russia obviously differs from other regions. That is proved by calculation. Its area of strategic resources, which is characterized by poor infrastructure and low social attractiveness. Development of transport logistic infrastructure in distant regions changed the effect of peripherality. Changing also, we can see change in population well-being and life quality conditions. At the regional level, the industrial development belt is defined. As you saw, this is a dark blue line from western part of Russia to far east. Regions of the same similarity type, for example, like the dark blue belt, are connected territorially. They can form an investment territorial complex with vector in industrial intensification and development factors. It bases on the general financial, economic, and transport infrastructure of the regions with city agglomerations. Simulating and increasing of efficiency of regional investment of northern areas is often connected with association of growth of investments and regional gross product rather than neighborhood to the center. Especially it is, we can see it, for example, for Yakutia or Buryatia. There was some big projects. The next, on the next step, we define such called economic age of regions as a parameter, not only geographical spatial heterogeneity, but also as a comparative characteristic of regional development during the historical times, geohistorical heterogeneity. Thus, we can take into account spatial temporal heterogeneity for regional development. There are it calculated as economic years. I'm sorry, I can see a mistake. And as we can see, there are two general geographical groups. The first one is East Siberia and Far East regions, with young resource-oriented economy. It's green. And the second one is West Siberian and West regions of Russia with more mature economy. It's yellow. The parameters of economic age and development are connected with the level of resource specialization and self-development potential of regional economy. On this diagram, you can see the dependence of the proportion of raw material economic branches from calculated economic age for Russian regions. Points are position of regions, different regions of Russia, depending on their economic age and proportion of raw material economic branches. And as we can see, the Moscow have the highest economic age and the lowest raw material economic branches. And also this diagram shows economic cycles from raw resource cycle to high investment and innovative cycle. And almost all Siberian and northern regions are on the left part of the diagram in a resource or transition position of cycle. And then the special calculated indices of regional economic age and economic efficiency of the region economy were used to classify the regions by the nature of economic behavior. So we can see four types. We defined 4 types of economic behavior, like innovative, transitional, or stereotype cyclic, and stereotype pro, and also stagnant type. It comprehensively reflects the features of the quality and standard of living, human potential, and other characteristics that affect the formation of an innovative environment in the region. Territories with stereotypical, cyclical, and innovative economic models of behavior were identified based on the associations between the considered indicators and indices, as I told. And in general, the Siberian and northern regions don't have a single linear behavior, but they divided into 2 main groups. The eastern part has a trend of raw stereotypical type of the economic behavior. It's Irkutsk region, Krasnoyarsky Krai, Altaisky Krai, Republic of Khakassia, Murmansky, and Arkhangelsky region. The second part is the western and some northern areas with high investment to region economy. It is transitional type. Novosibirsk, Tomsk, Kemerovo, Omsk regions, Ямало-Ненецкий and Nenetsky Okrug, and Republic of Sakha-Yakutia. So the northern areas have very high level of investments, and the western parts of Russia, western parts of Siberia have transitional type because they have better social and economic attractiveness for life, for living, and for education and some other parameters. And traditionally characterized as a deep periphery with a low population life quality, low investment efficiency, and poor resource base, it is Republic of Tuva, Republic of Altai, Chukotsky Okrug. They belong to stagnant economy. Thus, there are some conclusions from the research. The results show that the different territories are at different economic development stages in terms of their investment cycles, such as research, investment, and innovation economy. Several regional economic behavior trends are determined according to the types. For the Arctic area and Siberia, it's mainly raw or resource and transitional types. They are associated with a stereotypical way of conducting economic activity, when even the creating technical, technological, infrastructural, or other conditions like factors of second nature, including the Krugman, it's not enough for successful implementation of innovations. The important role of the stereotypical way of economic activity plays some constrained spatial, geographical, and geohistorical factors like young economic age or peripherality or others. Significant factors of the regional heterogeneity are non-linearity, and non-linearity are not only geographic conditions, but also revealed economic behavior types. So thank you for attention. If you have
Anastasia, yes, thank you so much for your report. We have one question from the audience. What is economic age in comparison with the usual age in years?
Yes, it's a good question. As we know, actually, I did not compare the calculation for it, but we know for example, Moscow was founded almost 1,000 years ago, and its economic age is about 52 economic years. I don't know what happened with my presentation.
It's ended. It shows that it's ended.
Yeah.
You can close and open it again.
Actually, now I'm very far from civilization in Barguzinsky Reserve because I am on my business trip and expedition, and the connection probably is not very good. So we can compare with Moscow age if we take a calculator. And for example, Siberian regions, according to calculated economic age, they are not older than approximately 20 economic years. And as we know, the development of Siberia, when Russian people start to have economic connection with Siberian regions, it's maybe 300-400 years ago, but active industrial development was started during the Soviet period of time, maybe 70 years ago.
So the age is relative, right? Economic age is relative to when the region was started developing. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, if you don't need that's fine. Thank you. Vladimir has a question, right?
I have a general question.
Okay.
A little bit general question. It's about relationship between economic development and social development in this region. And now we have a kind of acceleration in economic development of Arctic regions, and how it relates to social development. It's stagnant or it's go up, go down. What is your opinion?
Actually, mostly we calculated, we used economic parameters for it, but I think that social development is stagnant or even worse, because there is not enough people who wants to live there, even when government ready to pay for it. And we can see very strong migration from Siberia, from the north and from Far East to central part of Russia and to the different countries.
Thank
you. Okay, thank you, Vladimir. Thank you, Anastasia. So if there are no more questions, I don't see any. So Anastasia, if you could stop your screen sharing. Yes, thank you so much. Yeah. Okay, then we can move on to the next presenter, if she's with us, I hope. Tatiana Burmenko, yeah. So yeah, our next report is titled Fuel and Energy Complex, Economic Benefits versus Conservation of the Arctic Environment, presented by Tatiana Burmenko from the Siberian Federal University in Krasnoyarsk.
So, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Let me introduce my presentation about the fuel and energy complex of the Arctic. First of all, the background of the research is that around half of the world's gas resources are concentrated in the Arctic, mostly in the Russian Arctic. And of course, large extractive companies started their infrastructure projects in this area. You can see some of them like Yamal LNG, Tazovskaya, Sakhalin, etc., and others. And of course, the development of the Arctic is closely connected with its activities and the activities of extraction companies. And extraction industry allows to receive additional revenues from the export of natural resources, first of all, gas and oil. And on the other hand, this massive use of natural resources strongly affects ecosystem of the Arctic, mostly in a negative way. So the main problem is whether it is possible to find a balance between the economic interests of mining of companies, not only mining, just companies, extractive companies, and the state. How can we preserve the natural heritage in the Arctic, and also how can we work with the indigenous population in the Arctic? Because industrial human activity and industrial enterprises already affects the quality of the Arctic. And nowadays, the implementation of projects still depends more on the factor of economic efficiency than on the environmental component. And the only way we can see is a closer cooperation between business, between local communities, between the state in general and local authorities to develop an agreed policy of action, to make some programs to save the ecology of the Arctic for the future. Of course, man-made disasters in the Arctic has led to serious consequences. For example, the Exxon Valdez oil spill in Alaska, and also I will talk later about the Norilsk spill. But firstly, let me show you some main causes of accidents at industrial facilities. These are mostly connected with the technology and technical that the low quality of design and technical solution, that critical level of fixed assets that are old, some poor quality of maintenance of these facilities, and that just in general, these facilities, the facilities of some organizations that don't meet the technical requirements at all. And despite the technical point of view, there is also a legislative point of view that today fines for environmental offenses are among one of the lowest in the administrative and criminal codes. And of course, if we take into account the revenues of these companies, the fines they got just very low, then for them it's easier to pay these fines than to make some investments into fixed assets and to avoid this situation in the future. So this one of the recent disasters, the Norilsk diesel oil spill, which occurred this year in May 2020, was also caused by the poor maintenance of the fuel storage tank in Norilsk region. It was owned by one of the biggest companies in the world called Nornickel. And during this disaster, more than 17,000 tons of diesel oil flooded into the local rivers. They were very clean, and in the future, these rivers they flew into some into bigger rivers and also to the ocean. So in some years, we might have some serious problems with the ecology, with the situation with fishing, biota of these rivers, and just in general, Earth, which was near. So this we can say that this disaster is one of the most awful disasters which occurred in the last years in the Arctic. If we talk about the impact of industry on the environmental safety of the Russian Arctic, we can see three main aspects. It's natural ecological risks, technical risks, and social risks. All in all, in general, they can also affect economic security of the state, environmental security, energy security, and social security, of course, because we talk about not only the nature, but the people living in these areas who suffer also from the pollution of their natural resources. The three main points of pollution are air, water, and industrial waste, main solids. To avoid this, to overcome these situations, we can use restrictive measures and use of some nature-saving technologies together to make the practice of conservation of the ecology to make it more clear. On this slide, you can see some of the Russian companies working in the Russian Arctic. The main are Rosneft, Novatek, and Gazprom, working in different sectors. And you can see as well that 70% of Russian share in the global distribution of Arctic gas. And Russia also shares 41% of global distribution of oil reserves. So it means that there's in the future, it can be a huge incomes for the companies working in this sector. And of course, some of this income should be also shared with the population of the Arctic. And also some of these investments or some of this income should also work, so to say, for the restoration of the Arctic environment. Also, we made some research about the regions of the Russian Arctic with a high level of pollution. These are some of the regions, not all of them, but some of the regions with the most polluted regions in the Russian Arctic. According to some estimations, most of them are water pollution, air pollution, and industrial waste. If we talk about Krasnoyarsk territory, where I'm from, the Krasnoyarsk territory has one of the biggest points of air pollution among other Arctic regions. And if we speak about Murmansk region, Republic of Karelia, and Arkhangelsk region. Here's the water pollution takes the leading role among other aspects of pollution. So we made some ways to solve the problems. The two main ways are legislation and technology. To talk about legislation, it's of course a closer cooperation between business, local communities, and local authorities. To make some amendments also to the administrative and criminal code in terms of increasing the amount of fines for environmental pollution, and also to toughen criminal penalties for person responsible for compliance with environmental protection measures, and also an application of the practice of environmental deduction from taxes of the companies as the compensation for living on the polluted territories, for the people who live on the polluted territories as well. And if we speak about technologies, some major companies already use new technologies, mostly from the satellite monitoring. They also develop and implement various technologies and methods for eliminating environmental problems, such as remote sensing of the Earth, use of unmanned aerial vehicles, some technologies to monitor pipeline systems are already used by the leading companies in this sector. The assessment of the air environment near refineries, in the fields, etc. It's made to know the situation and to act as fast as possible. And also there is a huge interest in the companies for specialized software systems based on neural networks and other advanced digital technologies to analyze the results obtained, and also to analyze to make some prognosis for the future. How can the pipeline, for example, work in these conditions, or if the condition will change, how it will affect the pipeline, how it will affect the process, the production process, etc. So I can say that for the specialists working in the software systems, this area is very prominent, and they also can produce a lot of programs for the leading extractive companies in the Russian Arctic as well. So these my contributing authors. My presentation is finished, and I would be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Tatiana. Thank you so much. No questions in the Q&A box so far. Maybe someone from the panel would like to ask something. I had a question about Nornickel, actually. What were the consequences to them after that oil spill?
Well, as far as I know, that they had some fines, and they had also some, and some criminal fines as well, but I think that they have paid a certain amount of money as for the pollution, and I think that nothing else has happened. I don't know if they made if they see the other storage tanks, not this situation to come again. But I don't know what's going on actually in the company, and this information is quite closed for the publicity. So I think they gonna make some changes in the management system.
Thank you. We have a few questions. Oh, someone commented that, yeah, Nornickel paid 146 billion ruble fine. That's quite a lot.
Just a question. How avoid this situation in the future? What is your opinion about this? How can we, what should we do to avoid such a situation of damage, of such a damage?
Like in Norilsk as
You
well.
have any thoughts about it?
Well, it's thank you for your question. First of all, it's quite an interesting but also very um, hard question to answer because we don't know what are the companies going to do. They tell one things in the public fields for the press, for the people living in these territories, but what they actually do, we don't know. As far as I know, some of the companies like Rosneft and Novatek, they pay attention to their technical situation in their facilities. But if we speak about companies who work for a longer period of time, like Nornickel, for example, they have these storages, they're more than 50 or 60 years old. And also last month or in the beginning of the March, they had the second accident on their facilities and people died as well, just because no attention was paid to the technical situation. So I think that the legislative ways of affecting these companies may work in terms of um, amendments in the criminal code for the people working and for the management, but I don't know, will it work or will it not work actually? Um, Also, having a look on the international situation, the companies working in Brazil, for example, in Alaska, and different countries, they also have problems uh, um, with their facilities. And this oil spill in the Mexican region, in the Mexican Gulf of Mexico, 10 years ago, they also had this problem. And actually, I don't know what consequences they had and was the problem solved in general. So I think we should ask the specialists in this area about the future aspects.
Thank you. Thank you, Vladimir, for your question. We have one more question in the Q&A box. Do the state and private corporations arrange any changes in their corporate policies in conjunction with obligations of Paris Agreement?
As far as I know, these aspects are not on the agenda right now, like not in the first points of the agenda, actually. Some of the companies pay attention to the CO2 emissions as well, especially in the Arctic, because of the, I forgot this word, not that the ice will melt, because their facilities are built on the ice. And if it melts, it also can cause us huge damages for the companies. But in general, the Paris agreements are not that interesting for the extractive companies, actually, because as I told, the revenues are so high that all the other problems they're just not interesting for the companies that much. They work with the population of the territories they work on. They work with the regional authorities as well. But in general, if we talk about the Paris legislation, Paris agreements, I think that it's not on the top of the interest of the companies right now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. There is one more question. Perhaps you know what it's about. Have these companies issued any ESG bonds? I don't know what that is. Or are they going to in the near future?
I will have a look. I need to ask what is ESG bonds, because I'm not that, I don't know that much about this.
Mm-hmm. Just a second. Okay, so if anyone could help us with them, well, we can just look it up. Environmental, social, and governance bonds.
Well, I also just read. It's quite interesting, but unfortunately, I haven't met this information during the preparation for this presentation. That's why I cannot ask this question, but we can get in contact with the person who asked this. And if he will be still interested in this, then I will explain more in detail this question.
Yeah. So the person that asked that question, we could have you join the post-panel discussion if you like. Just message me, and we will add you to the panelist group at the very end of this panel. Okay, so if there are no more questions, I think we can move on to the next presenters. Thank you so much, Tatiana. And our next report is titled Russia and Economic Development of the Arctic Frontier, presented by Alexander Petrov from Institute of World History, the Russian Academy of Sciences, Moscow, and Vladimir Kosternichenko from Moscow State Linguistic University.
Okay, thank you very much, Ksenia. Let me start with my part of presentation, and then I will give the floor to my colleague. First of all, I would like to thank Fulbright office, particularly Gerald, and the ambassador, and everyone who actually helped to organize such a great seminar. That's a superb job. Thank you very much. As you know, my name is Alexander Petrov, and I'm a specialist in the more on the history of Russian America and the Alaska colonies. But when I was a Fulbright scholar back in 2001 and 2008, I was kind of interested in the economic development of the Arctic region, and we organized seminars in the Woodrow Wilson Center, and on the basis of multidisciplinary framework. And as Joe just said at the very beginning, we are all in the same boat, and it's very important to study that through the multidisciplinary lens, I would say. So I would like also to say a few words about my colleague, Vladimir Kosternichenko, who is one of the leading specialists in the economy of Arctic, and who's gonna speak more on economic framework about oil drilling and stuff like that. I would like particularly to pay attention to the very last word on our title. We mentioned the Arctic frontier. As you know, we don't have such a word in Russian language, because it's kind of a mixture of understanding between the border and the frontier. We just simply transliterate that word as the frontier, I would say. And I would like to point out that this is a great project that are run by the Library of Congress. It's called Meeting of Frontiers, which is a bilingual and multimedia English-Russian digital library that tells the story of the American exploration and settlement of the West and parallel exploration of Siberia and Russian Far East, and also the study of the meeting of the Russian-American frontier in Alaska and the Pacific Northwest. I hope that that project that actually initiated by the Senator Ted Stevens of Alaska and James Billington of the Librarian of Congress will go on, because it's very important for us to understand our both common history and common heritage and economy. Another thing I would like to say that I also teach a course in Moscow State Linguistic University regarding the United States and Great Britain, and we have special lectures and special seminars on Arctic, and students present their papers and their reports, and so it would be great in the future if we could also invite students or at least give them links so they could, participate, because that's very important and useful for them to see different points in different positions, and especially what you're doing, because again, that's the topic that unites our countries in our, I would say, difficult time. I remember that when I was in Alaska 2 years ago, we had very nice conference that organized by American Historical Society that paid special attention on multidisciplinary focus, and we discussed different issues on Arctic and different issues on economy, on culture, and indigenous population. And so I think that's very important what you're doing. And actually, Ksenia, we are going to switch our presentation, because right now I would like to give a floor to my colleague Vladimir, and then I will also take a lead, I would say, and explain my part of the paper, all right, if it's okay with you.
Absolutely okay. Whatever is more convenient for you.
Great, perfect. Okay, that's done. Vladimir, the floor is yours, and I will follow up.
Thank you. My report is about economic issues of that problems. Dear colleagues, just recently on October 26, 2020, it was approved the strategy for the development of the Russian Arctic zone. In this strategy, special attention is devoted to the oil and gas resources of the Russian Arctic. In this region, as you know, Russia has the world's largest offshore area rich in oil and gas. Currently, the Arctic is becoming a major promising oil and gas region in the world, in the only one with the possible discovery of giant fields. Gas deposits are main resource of the Arctic. The potential resources of the Arctic shelf are estimated at 62 trillion cubic meters. This is more than 35% of all Russian gas reserves. A global warming causes Arctic ice to recede, expanding the possibilities for navigation while opening new areas of the Arctic shelf for oil and gas exploration with the help of advanced technology. Research Mary-Louise Timmermans from Yale University and her team analyzed temperature data take over the last 30 years and found that amount of heat in the warmest part of the water of the inferior Arctic Ocean had effectively doubled in the period from 1987 to 2017. The area covered by Arctic ice will constantly diminish. By 2050, it will be 30% thinner, and its volume will decrease during this time by 40%. In such a case, the production of hydrocarbons will become significantly easier and cheaper. A chairman of Rosneft, Igor Sechin, compared the resources of this project to that of Saudi Arabia. He said, not like in the Gulf of Mexico, Alaska, and Canada, only like Saudi Arabia. It's a very big estimation, he said. There were some aggravation circumstances which was discussed by developers of the program of strategy. First, without the development of the Arctic oil and gas provinces, it was difficult to keep the annual production of Russian oil to the required level. Second, in 2014, the relations with Western countries became became worse. Prices for energy resources went down and the cooperation with some leading US companies ceased. This greatly accelerated the process of reorientation of Russia to the East Asian markets. In May 2014, Russia Gazprom and China CNPC signed a 30-year contract to supply gas to China. According to the contract, 38 billion cubic meters per annum every year would be supplied to China. This gas pipeline has been put into operation ahead of schedule in February 2019. The Western sanctions of 2014 included a ban for supply of offshore technologies and equipment. Paradoxically, these limitations have led to a positive result. Instead of restraining the activity on the Arctic shelf, they pushed the Russian oil companies to take steps to accelerate oil production in this region. Rosneft began exploratory drilling operation. At the end of last year, a unique manufacturing base for the production of offshore equipment was established. The Special Arctic Research and Design Center for Offshore Development was founded. The goal of the center is to offer technological solutions in the Arctic oil fields. Rosneft company plans to invest $400 billion in the Arctic in the next 20 years. The other Russian company, Gazprom, is to invest $170 billion into integrated development of the Yamal Peninsula Arctic fields. An example of this investment can be Northern Sea Road, Северный широтный ход, which has been implemented, which will be implemented in the Yamal-Nenets autonomous region by Development Corporation. American experts Amy Ferris-Rothman and William Booth point out that Northern Sea Road could become alternative to Egypt's Suez Canal. Its advantages. The voyage via Suez Canal would take 34 days for ships. The trip via Northern Sea route, 23 days. And recently, this project is realizing. In particular, 3 icebreakers were built in past year, and the world's first floating nuclear power plant called Lomonosov has been built and started working in the city of Murmansk. In addition, as it was announced in October 2020, Russia will build 3 of the world's most powerful nuclear icebreakers of the LEADER project and 5 icebreakers of the 2222 project. The most significant factor which drives the development of oil production in Arctic is the government support. As for the development of technology and vital infrastructure, Russia has 2 choices: either to do most of the required work on its own, or to invite foreign partners on board. Domestic development of new technologies could considerably increase costs and reduce the competitiveness of Russian Arctic projects, but in the long run could boost socioeconomic development in adjacent Russian regions. Russian and American companies can play significant and positive roles in the development of the Russian Arctic oil and gas projects. Such cooperation is not only optimal from the point of view of commercial interests of the Russian and American oil companies, but also represent the best option for the effective development of gas fields in the Arctic in the interest of Russia and USA in general. You know, yesterday we have a declaration of Putin about that Russia will continue develop projects with American companies of mutual interest. And I want to give the arguments in favor of the cooperation. First, the American experience in the field of the development in Alaska will be beneficial mutually. Environment issues will pose significant challenges for companies seeking to develop at large scale Arctic oil and gas fields. Especially implementation of Arctic projects will allow American companies to gain some access to new transport and traffic installations emerging in the Arctic region. Besides, American oil companies have a significant amount of so-called critical technologies in the field of offshore production. The use of American technology will not only help to reduce the project costs, but also significantly reduce environmental risks. We discussed this just before, and it's very important for all Arctic states. Cooperation between American and Russian companies is important from the point of view of the development of the highest safety standards during the course of drilling in the Arctic zone. These talks we have now made clear that it's vital Russian-American cooperation in Arctic. And I'm finished, and I, for conclusions, give word to Alexander Petrov. You know, he is world's leading specialist in the history of Russian Alaska. He also held special G.Q. Adams Fulbright Scholarship, and now we do joint project with him. The history of this project is big, and we cooperate with from 2001. I give him a floor, please.
Thank you, Vladimir. Actually, we've got maybe just a few minutes, and I would like to leave those time to questions, but at any rate, maybe 2 minutes, Ksenia, if I may.
Yes, go ahead. We have 2 minutes
Okay, great.
questions, and no questions so far, so yeah. Right.
Just maybe 2 minutes the most. Okay, I would like to point out that the percentage of urbanization of the Russian part of the Arctic is relatively high, comparing to other countries, and many people in Arctic zone in Russia live in towns, about like at least 30 Russian towns or villages, big Russian villages located in the Arctic zone. And I would like to pay special attention that it's really crucial for us to understand their lives and needs, because we also have the border on Diomede Islands between Russia and the United States. And in order to understand their indigenous culture and common traditions, that's one of the keys to understand the future of our relations in the 21st century. Actually, Vladimir already mentioned many key figures on the economic development. The only thing I would like to point out that presently we have very important Russia-OPEC negotiations between Russia-OPEC negotiations on the oil price in the future. And I think that we should understand the role of USA companies as well, so that American fracking industry and American new technological companies who actually do their work not only in Arctic zone but also in Texas. Also be joined in the future to the common negotiations on the price of oil, because actually that's the global economic security in my understanding. And very last but not least, I would like to pay attention that Arctic countries, that not only Russia, Norway, Canada, and Denmark, but also the United States of America, and also other countries very much interested in the projects such as Switzerland and China. And we also got to pay attention to those countries as well. I would like to remind you very briefly that Alaska was the actually basically a subarctic zone was the starting point of the Russian-American relations back in the 19th century. And it's my belief that I will always say that during all the conferences and our seminars with our American colleagues, that the future may also be in that region as well. So that it could be a starting point of renewing, resetting, if I may use this word of Russian-American relations. It used to be fur pelts in the past, but presently that's gas and oil, and that's the future, at least the near future. And we look forward to the better relations based on that. I think that my time is about, so I've got maybe 2 minutes to questions, or maybe 1 minute, I don't know. It's up to you.
If we have any, yes. So if anyone has questions to Alexander or Vladimir, go ahead. And if there are none, yeah, doesn't seem like it. So thank you so much, Alexander and Vladimir.
I think that we used all our, time.
Almost. No, we still have 3 minutes, but yeah, we were very on schedule. So sometimes there are more questions. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A box, as I've mentioned.
Maybe people are too shy to ask questions.
Well, maybe, yes. And in case, you have more questions, we could address them during the post-panel discussion.
Sure.
Yeah, so thank you once again. And I think we can now move on to the next presenter. Our last report for today, it's a closing one. It's titled Svalbard, an Archipelago of Cooperation or Competition by Alena Zuzina from the Russian State University for the Humanities, Moscow. Okay, great. Yes, Alena, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you all. Is everything okay with my presentation? Okay, then let's go. So today, there are many unresolved issues around the Svalbard archipelago. According to Article 1 of the Paris Treaty on Svalbard, the archipelago ceased to be considered a no man's territory, passing under the sovereignty of Norway. In turn, the other countries participating in the treaty received the right to develop its resources on equal terms. Consequently, both the continental shelf and exclusive economic zone of Svalbard fall under the provisions of the treaty. A particularly controversial point is the procedure for accessing and conducting economic activities on the shelf of the archipelago. Oslo insists that the Svalbard shelf should be considered an extension of the Norwegian continental shelf. Following this logic, the country's authorities, on the basis of national legislation, began to distribute among interested oil companies the concession areas located within the so-called Svalbard Square. In Russia, this causes a just protest. Moscow's position is that the legal regime established by the 1920 treaty fully applies to the Svalbard shelf. Therefore, Norway cannot exercise any exclusive interests and rights in relation to the shelf without the consent of all parties of the treaty. Moreover, the treaty is not an act of the Norwegian domestic law. Thus, Norway has no right to change its provisions unilaterally. Over the years, a line was gaining strength in Norway to strengthen its influence in the archipelago by gradually limiting the rights of other parties. The most striking mark in this regard was the adoption in 2002 of a law on environmental protection, which in fact establishes a permissive procedure for any economic activity or on a large territory it is generally prohibited. In general, to date, about 50 normative acts have been issued that regulate almost all aspects of activities. Approximately 65% of the territory is protected by the kingdom. Another notable step in this direction is the unilateral establishment in the 1977 of a legally dubious 200-mile fish protection zone around Svalbard. The decision clearly contradicts the principle of free access of the parties to the treaty to engage in economic activities in the archipelago area and its waters, despite the fact that the Russian Federation does not recognize the fish protection zone. The mentioned decision is used as a basis for the detention of Russian fishing vessels by the Norwegian Coast Guard and the imposition of onerous penalties against them. This is explained by the fact that at the time of signing of the treaty, the concept of the continental shelf did not exist in principle, which made it possible for Norway to bypass the provisions of the treaty. An unexpectedly acute issue of Russia's presence in Svalbard have become the use of the helicopter of the Arctic Trust, which the local aviation authorities are trying to reduce to only providing coal mining. There is a de facto creation of their own transport monopoly, which is a gross violation of the treaty and the rights of the other economic operators. At the same time, the conditions of the growth of tourist flow to Russian settlements and development of science, the expanded operation of the Russian helicopter becomes vital. There is no runway in Berensburg, nor there have ever been a land road to the archipelago capital of Longyearbyen or to any other place, only if by snowmobiles in winter. Therefore, we do need a helicopter. But after the collapse of the USSR, the Norwegian side began to impose their own conditions on us that the helicopter can only be used for tasks related to the coal industry. Also, even in the 1920 Svalbard Treaty, commercial activities are allowed, to which we also include tourism. Cruise yachts and ships with tourists came here, and it's completely incomprehensible why the Norwegian side does not agree that the tourism is a commercial activity. As a result, we cannot carry tourists either. The same applies to science. If scientific activity is not spelled out in the treaty, then the Norwegian side sets its own restrictions, and the scientists from any country must comply with them. For example, the scientific village of New Ålesund on Svalbard, only natural sciences are allowed. Meanwhile, foreign scientists who work there want to deal with humanitarian or sociological problems, such as attitude of the population to coal mining, to the melting of glaciers, but the Norwegian side does not allow them to do this. Norway wants to reduce the use of the heavy marine fuel in all territorial waters of the archipelago, whereas now it's prohibited only in nature protection zones. There are plans to limit the size of tourist ships, as well as to revise the rules for the movement of motorized vehicles. The Norwegian says that by introducing new restrictions, they do not violate anything, since the rules are the same both for Russians and Norwegians themselves and for other parties to the treaty. That formally everything has been observed, but in fact, that limits, for example, the activities of our scientists. For the last 6 years, they have been able to study, in fact, only the outskirts of Berensburg. Norway discriminatory rules for deportation from the archipelago adopted by Norway in September 2016 remain a serious irritant in Russian-Norwegian relations. They apply to persons against whom international restrictive measures, to which Norway has joined, have been adopted. We are talking about the EU Anti-Russian Sanctions. Naturally, the unilateral sanctions of the European Union, which did not receive the approval of the UN Security Council, can in no way serve as a basis for such actions in relation to citizens of the states parties of the treaty. They started talking about this after a visit to Svalbard in 2015 by Dmitry Rogozin, at the same time the Deputy Prime Minister of the Russian government. There is even a special procedure, namely, if a person who is on the sanctioned list arrives to Svalbard, the governor, accompanied by the police, is obliged to detain him, escort him to a certain room, and send the detainee back at his own expense. Well, it turns out that the Consul General of Russia must somehow intervene and beat him back. On this occasion, diplomatic notes have been exchanged between Russia and Norway for a long time. Another irritating factor in relations with Norway is associated with growing NATO activity on Russia's northern borders. On the territory of Norway, large-scale exercises of the alliance have repeatedly been carried out. Such neutral countries as Finland and Sweden are actively involved in these maneuvers with the use of the military infrastructure. Nevertheless, despite the seemingly insoluble political contradictions, there are also promising ways of cooperation. It should be based on the daily routine of people of Svalbard. I would call it bottom-up politics. Here they are. The Norwegians are left with only one operating mine, Grove 7, which supplies coal, including the Longyearbyen thermal power station. It is planned to develop it until at least 2030. All other Norwegian mines are closed as the price of the coal falls, which the Norwegian side has ambitious goals to be a zero-emission society. According to forecasts, there will be enough coal at the Berensburg mine until 2050. Attempts to restore the Grumman deposit turned up to be unprofitable, and billions of rubles are needed. At Berensburg today, 120,000 tons of coal are mined per year, 30,000 of which are used for the needs of the thermal power station in the village of Berensburg. The thermal power station in the local time is heat and electricity. Without them, people would have to be evacuated. Therefore, production at the Berensburg mine should be maintained at least for this reason. Diesel is expensive to import, so it would be a good project if they built an LNG storage facility there. Ideas like this come up periodically. Alternative energy could also be a good point of contact. So a promising direction would be the installation of wind generators in order to jointly reduce the amount of emissions into the atmosphere. The Russian side has the project to build a fish processing plant in Berensburg. It has already been included in the zoning plan for the areas of Berensburg. As soon as the Norwegian side approves it, the environmental impact assessment will begin immediately. The Norwegians have a lot of experience in the fish processing industry, which together we could implement in this project. This would increase the level of mutual trust and create new jobs in the archipelago, both for Russians and Norwegians. Together with this, a new question arises and a new perspective of possible cooperation. Is there enough fresh water in Berensburg? After all, a fish processing plant needs a lot of it. Berensburg itself barely has enough water intake from a freshwater lake on the other side of the fjord. And if there is a fish factory, then consumption will greatly increase. This means that it's necessary to pull the pipeline to another lake, which is already outside the Russian land plot. And near there are no fresh water resources, only streams. Thus, the joint laying of the pipeline can be the most important project for the archipelago, could become a good platform for joint cooperation. At the recent annual meeting of Arctic Google in Berensburg, it was announced that in 2019, tourism revenue for the first time exceeded the size of the state subsidy, amounting 500 million rubles per year, which the trust receives. And over the past few years, tourism has generated more revenue than the sale of coal. Thus, together with the Norwegian side, it would be mutually beneficial to develop a roadmap for tourism development in Svalbard and conducting a joint advertising campaign to promote Arctic tourism for both countries. The last point I would like to mention is the joint testing of various technologies in extreme conditions, as well as the involvement of Norwegian scientists in Russian projects in the archipelago, who have recently been testing in Longyearbyen, for example, frost-resisting paint or 5G communication systems in the Arctic. Last year, a strategy for industrial development of the Norwegian Svalbard was released, and there is directly recommended to turn the archipelago into a platform for testing new technologies. This is a cross-cutting topic. And why don't we follow the same path? For example, lighting design is relevant in view of the polar night or studies of the effect of cosmic radiation at high latitudes on the human body. In 2016, the Russian Research Center of a dozen Russian research organizations was established in Svalbard. It could become the base platform from the Russian side. So, despite a number of fundamental disagreements, contradictions, a pragmatic approach to bilateral cooperation in the archipelago from the standpoint of constructive dialogue opens up mutually beneficial prospects for both sides. There is a strong commitment to strengthening, diversifying, and modernizing them. Russia is steadfastly in favor of further strengthening international cooperation in the region, maintaining its depoliticized nature and focus on achieving concrete practical results. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Alena. Thank you for such an interesting report on such an interesting place. Yeah, I don't think we have questions from the audience. The previous question I had was more like a comment about green energy that probably we can talk about in the discussion. So if anyone has questions about Svalbard, or Svalbard, right? I have one actually.
Okay.
Yeah, so if anyone wants to contribute anything, go ahead. I have a question about the tourism. Right. So what attracts people to the archipelago? Is it the seed vault or is it open to tourists at all? Or what's so interesting there? So how can they develop this particular area, yeah, to contribute to the development of the islands?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Thank you very much for this. I do believe first thing is that that's real Arctic. So the environment, the fauna, it's really something different what we see in Russia, for example, in Moscow here. So there is a huge historical tie to Svalbard, both for Russians and Norwegians. So people come to see not only the Arctic hills or polar bears, they come to see the real history here, I do believe.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Any more questions? Probably not. Yeah, we have a question in chat. So are there Russian citizens in Berensburg? Do they have Norwegian passports?
No. They have
don't,
Russian
or there aren't?
No, they have not. They have Russian passports.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's a territory free for all, but under the sovereignty of Norway.
And they probably work there, right?
Yeah, there are two settlements. The Longyearbyen, which is the capital settlement, it's Norwegian, and the Berensburg, it's Russian side. So they're located kind of far from each other, but it's vital to cooperate.
Can they move in Norway free? So, so can they move to other parts of Norway, I suppose the question is?
No, because the Paris Treaty includes only the area of Svalbard. So if you want to go to Oslo or any other city of Norwegian cities, you have to get a visa.
I see. Yeah, interesting. Okay, so any more questions? We have a question from Joel Erickson. Is there an indigenous community in Svalbard?
Unfortunately, no, because of the poor development in previous centuries. There were some indigenous peoples, but they are now extinct.
So none left.
Yes.
And more questions. And Norwegian citizens, do they live in the city?
No, it's a village of Longyearbyen.
So probably the Norwegians are in majority there, right? Anyway.
Yeah, of course. And the village is bigger than Russian.
Okay. Okay, so no more questions from the audience, probably. Okay, thank you so much, Alena.
Thank you.
Once again for your report. And yeah, if you could turn up your screen sharing. Yes, thank you. Okay, so that was the last report for today's panel, the first panel of today about the economics and politics. And some of the panelists unfortunately had to leave already due to time difference and other commitments. So we thank everyone in the audience for joining us today and asking questions. Some of them are quite interesting. Right now, all the panelists are welcome to engage in any kind of dialogue and discussion, if you like. They're free to do so. And if anyone from the audience wants to participate in the discussion as panelists, you can also let me know if you feel comfortable turning on your microphone at least. So go ahead. And Joel, did you want to say anything?
Yes, just I think we're kind of setting the stage, I think, for the next, the climate change, ecology, and the Arctic environment. I think that one of the things I've taken away from this first set of panels is that there's a huge amount of natural resources to exploit through the extractive industries in the area described. I don't see, and much of that lies in the Russian area. You know, I heard the comment about Igor Sechin mentioning that there's as much natural resource in terms of oil and gas as one would find in Saudi Arabia. I think it's clear if all of that oil and gas is extracted and used, then the climate change issue will be all the greater. Are there any incentives for a moderated extraction of those resources or not? And it seems that's an important question, that a governance question that might need to be addressed, it seems to me. So that would just be a comment for discussion.
Yeah. And we had also a comment in the questions and answers box. Nowadays, everyone is talking about green energy without any specifics from one of our attendees. So if you would like to comment on that or elaborate what you meant, or maybe a question you had in regards to that, you're welcome to. And does any of our panelists want to say something or ask questions to their colleagues other than those that already have been asked? We don't have many panelists left, but yeah, feel free if you do. Or we could wrap it up if there is no more food for discussion for this panel. There is more questions. Yes. Yeah. So In Arctic region, we have gas and oil. And nowadays, everyone is talking about green energy. So these two comments I'm putting up together. Okay. And there is more, yeah, there is one more question, a very long one. Let me read it. Ex-President Trump increased the military presence in the Arctic region due to national security issues. And the current leader of the country doesn't seem to roll up Trump's legacy. Will this geopolitical tension escalate in slowing down or even canceling the economic projects of mutual interests? That's the question. You can see it in the box as well. So what do you think, the panelists that have remained here, about the military presence in the Arctic region?
Well, from my point of view, military situation in the Arctic is just totally separate from other points of interest of USA and Canada in the Arctic, because Arctic, of course, it's a point of military interest for mostly all the countries which has Arctic, Russia as well, Norway, I mean, European Union. But if we talk about the mutual interests in the Arctic, they're mostly about oil and gas extractions, energy, and ecology. And from this point of view, that all the countries, as I can see from my work with international colleagues, we are organizing some events during the Arctic Science Summit Week, etc. That these points of interest are common for all the countries which has access to the Arctic. And we don't speak about the military situation in there, about the army, because it's more the higher politics, which we cannot affect, which we don't know anything about this kind of politics. So in our situation, like scientists, we can only work together in terms of promoting some mutual interests in ecology, in the reduction of CO2 emissions, in some climate change, in the social situation, etc. So I just will reread this question. So
it's
no,
now in
I don't think that these the projects in the Arctic will cancel. So they will just go on and make are going to be bigger and closer.
Thank you. Okay. Coming back to the previous comments, right? So about green energy. So basically in the Arctic, there's a lot of gas and oil, and in other parts of the world, namely Europe, there, as the commenter says, they're all fans of wind and sun energy and water energy. So probably that brings us back to the question that Anisia received at the very beginning of the panel, right? So what are the opportunities for green energy in the Arctic in general, if there are any, right? So she mentioned about the wind energy, but what's the future of the green energy in the Arctic region? Does anyone have any thoughts? Yeah.
I have, well, yeah. As far as I know, that some, I will talk about the Russian Arctic.
Yeah.
That I know that some regions of the Russian Arctic, they implement some new green resources, green energy, but not that much because of some conditions, climate conditions. It's not that easy to implement this green energy, of course, and it's not easy to, so to say, escalate from region to region. So we need to talk about the each region in separately to know what kind of resources they have and what can we implement in there, sun, wind, water energy as well. So if, for example, if we take into account a country like Norway or Denmark, quite a small country, of course, they can afford themselves to use, or Iceland, of course, because they use a lot of water energy from their water resources. So for Russia, in terms of it's a big country, it will not be that successful for Russia to use green energy in general, but of course we can promote this and also make some regions to switch from the normal resources like oil and gas to the green energy as well. I don't know, I think that Anisia would tell more, but as far as I know about Yakutia, that they have some villages in the northern part of Yakutia. They implement this sun and wind energy as well, just because of the climate, that in winter it's very cold in there, and the pipelines and electricity lines, they can switch off and they will not work. And in these terms, to make secure energy transportations, they use these green energy. So for Russia, it's more like that the population can use, can choose by themselves whether they're gonna use gas or they're gonna use winds. So for Russia, it's a way of choose of, yes, if I told, and also it's a kind of good question for the future researchers and for the future companies working in this energy sector of the economy. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Maybe I could add, someone brought up that a floating nuclear power station had been created by Russia. And I wonder, does anybody have any idea, prediction, what role nuclear power might play? I mean, it wasn't that long ago in the United States where any mention of nuclear power, it was almost considered evil. But now we've come to think quite a lot of environmentalists have really taken an about face on this, because nuclear energy, if it's properly managed, I don't think it has a climate changing effect. Does anybody have any thoughts or comments on the future of nuclear power in the region, and or the possibility of U.S.-Russia cooperation in that area?
Well, we have this nuclear power in Chukotka region, and as far as I know, it works, and it works quite good. And of course, it's a question of technology maintaining to make a timely renovation and so on. Just these power plants are still going, but I've heard about that it's quite interesting for some of the Russian regions to build the nuclear powers in their regions. But also there's a question with permafrost, so to say, because it will start to melt. The nuclear power can also have some problems with its functioning. So still it's 50-50. Of course, it's quite green energy, but it has some problems as well.
Yeah. From what I know, there are no green gases emissions, right, out of the nuclear power, but they also, the nuclear power production also consumes a certain amount of, or produces a certain amount of output, the same as electricity, right? So it's probably greener than some forms of energy producing, but yeah, not the greenest or not as green. And yeah, so the commenter about the green energy also asked, does it make sense for the Arctic to develop green energy in general? Well, I mean, for the climate impact, it probably does, right? So anywhere resorting to green energy is probably better in general overall for the climate of the planet, but I don't know if the person meant for the Arctic economically speaking or something like that. Okay, so I don't see any more questions from the audience. Oh, there is one. So, well, Joel, you can also see that question if you check the Q&A box. Probably you can just read the comment yourself. Do you see it? I don't hear you, please. Your mic is on.
Yeah, the question's regarding what I just brought up. The majority of the resources are in the holdings of state-owned companies. There are no chances that the state would allow independent monitoring of the extraction processes, since the federal budget equals Russian development mainly relies on resources selling incomes. Interesting. I would be interested in knowing why would independent monitoring not be allowed? Sometimes that can become important to furthering international agreements, for example. Perhaps the questioner could respond.
Okay, so Alexander doesn't elaborate on that. Okay, so the person, the previous questions about does it make sense financially and economically for green energy to develop? Yeah. So.
Okay.
Okay. So.
Then we will, shall we reconvene then at 5 p.m.?
Around 5 p.m. Yes, I hope the next batch of panelists will log in a little bit earlier. Everyone is welcome to join us as well for the second panel. First, basically, the first part of the climate change ecology and the Arctic environment panel. So, and I think right now, no more questions. So thank you, the panelists that have stayed with us. Thank you so much for joining us today and for your interesting reports. It was a pleasure. I think Joel shares in the sentiment. Thank you so much. Oh, there is, what is there a question? No, it's thanks from our commenter. Thank you so much for asking and for bringing us ideas to talk about. That's it. Once again, thank you, and see you everyone who's willing to join us in the next panel at 5 p.m. Everyone's supposed to have the link. If you don't have the link, let me know, but you should have the link to join in the next webinar and Zoom panel. So see you later.